Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. Football season is getting closer as all 18 teams prepare to hit Las Vegas this week for Big Ten Media Days. We will preview everything that's about to go down in Sin City this week, including storylines for Purdue and the league as a whole. Plus, we'll talk about some of the biggest news across college athletics with the House settlement and with the back and forth of possible, but not guaranteed, NCAA Tournament expansion. If you don't already, be sure to follow the show on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. There is a lot to talk about. There's going to be even more to talk about here as media days go on this week, as training camp begins next week. Come join the conversation. Be sure to send in questions there on Twitter @BoilersBeyond or via email, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. And be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a thing. Planning to be here every week between now and the end of basketball season into the transfer portal, the fallout for whatever happens on the hardwood. So be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. And later this week, Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, I'll be live on YouTube with Inside the Pylon, a podcast talking about Big Ten football. I'll be previewing the Boilermakers with them. So come join. If you can't hop in live, no worries. It'll be posted in their podcast feed. I'll be sure to link that out on Twitter as well. But come hang out there. Be spending 30, 45 minutes previewing Purdue a little bit. But Big Ten Media Days are this week. The unofficial start of talking season. The unofficial start of the season, really. Because when you look at where we're at in the calendar, media days are this week. Purdue starts practice next week. You've got your practice reports. You've got your camp intel. And then end of August, we hit the ground running. So this is really the start of it all. And, of course, it's interesting this year because it's in Las Vegas, right in the heart of Big Ten country. I say that sarcastically. Mandalay Bay is a far cry from the Chicago hotels or Lucas Oil Stadium where they used to do this thing. But Purdue goes on Thursday, and Barry Odom will be out there alongside Devin Mockobee, CJ Madden, and Tony Grimes. You know Devin Mockobee. CJ Madden was on the team last year. Defensive end who was hurt and missed the rest of the season after the Oregon State game, I believe. I believe he went down in that one. And then Tony Grimes, an interesting one. We'll talk about each of these guys a little bit more momentarily. But with Purdue specifically here, what to watch for at media days, there's nothing in particular that Barry Odom needs to do or needs to say. The Big Ten is a little bit more laid back. We come off of, for those that are as obsessive over college football as I am, the SEC last week, where you have massive breakdowns by analysts on the SEC network and by Paul Feinbaum on what coaches said and how they said it and all of that. You don't really get that at the Big Ten. That's not a thing. And for Barry Odom, I don't want to say this is a blank slate of a year. It's not a freebie of a year, but everyone knows exactly what Purdue is up against this year. It's a really uphill task, and Purdue won't have a ton of the hard-hitting media after it. There aren't that many storylines here that folks are going to latch on to. Now, that doesn't make what's going down any less relevant. Purdue fans are still going to be dialed in, as you should be. I know I certainly will be. But I expect Barry Odom to speak confidently. I thought it was a little bit of a foreshadow when he went on Indianapolis Sports Radio last week over on the 1070 or 107.5 The Fan. And he spoke very confidently. He talked about how he's not talking about last season because he wasn't around last season, and a lot of the players weren't around for last season. So, he's not really worried about that. And he got folks fired up on Twitter when he made a comment about Indiana canceling a non-conference series against Virginia. That got Indiana fans really riled up. It is what it is. I assume, being a Purdue podcast, I think I know how most of you are going to feel about that. There are arguments to be made on both sides. I'm a proponent of easier non-conference schedules because it's never been rewarded. And as Indiana kind of proved last year, there's no incentive to schedule a difficult non-conference schedule. I can't blame them there. Also, Curt Cignetti speaks very brashly, very arrogantly. And to go cancel that series, well, I think that's a little bit of a backslide on the way he presents himself. And, it does come at an interesting time as well. Indiana had let a number of athletic department jobs go, and to go pay $500,000 to cancel that series is interesting. But, that's kind of Barry Odom. He's not afraid. He's not going to be super brash, super outspoken, but he'll get a quib in there, and he believes in himself. He believes in what he's doing. So we'll see where that goes. I'm sure Barry Odom will be asked about that again out there. And ultimately, that's one of his biggest jobs here, is to get the Indiana series back on Purdue's side. Purdue has to flip the narrative on that series, because I don't think either of those programs are going to be competing at a national level, for national championships, for Big Ten titles. So that battle for in-state supremacy matters a lot. It matters a lot to fans. And right now, all the momentum is on Indiana's side. We're not that far away from it all being on Indiana's side after the 2020 season, and that quickly flipped back to Purdue. I'm not predicting that's going to happen immediately here, but crazier things have happened. It's college football. I am looking forward to hearing Devin Mockobee in whatever capacity he gets talked to. His story is really, really unique in this period of college football. You don't see many walk-ons rise anymore, especially now with roster limits coming and all of that. But in the portal era, where you can theoretically plug holes much easier than you used to be able to, it's almost unfathomable now to think about a time 8 years ago when you were just kind of stuck with what you had. If you whiffed at a couple places in recruiting and you had a weak linebacker room, you couldn't just go get linebackers out of the portal. It's funny to think about how different the sport looks now, but Devin Mockobee did that. He worked his way up, and he was a redshirt freshman when he broke out. He did so quickly. He did so really quickly. And you don't see many guys stick around through 2 coaching changes and through back-to-back really disappointing seasons. Mockobee didn't have to do this. He didn't have to stay. He could have easily bolted after Jeff Brom departed. There was a market for him at that point. And he certainly could have bolted after 2023 when he didn't have the season he was hoping for, I'm sure. Purdue just went 4-8, not a great year for Purdue. And after last season, the abomination that was, he would have had a market. He could have easily wound up on another power conference roster. Now, would he have been guaranteed running back 1 the way he is at Purdue? I don't know, probably not, but he could have easily found himself a nice landing spot. I am almost positive. I went through the roster the other day, and I am almost positive he's the only player remaining from Purdue's 2022 Big Ten West Championship team. He is absolutely the only contributor from that team remaining. I don't know if any walk-ons or anything are still around, but he's been a good soldier to Purdue through all of this. Mockobee's always spoken highly of the Purdue education he's getting and the importance of that to him. He's donated money back to the youth football program in his hometown of Boonville, Indiana. A really unique, really good story, a really good kid. He deserves all of the shine he's going to receive this year as the lone player that Purdue fans really recognize on this roster. CJ Madden is another one of the few who stuck around. it's almost unbelievable how few players from last year are still at Purdue. It's not like I didn't realize that, but I'm thumbing through a preview magazine the other day, and you see the stats from last year, and you look at the roster, and it's completely different. It's absolutely different. I mean, Denylon Morissette is Purdue's leading returning receiver, and he had like 10 catches last year. Truly remarkable. But CJ Madden is intriguing. I know the group that came from Georgia ahead of last season got a really bad rap because CJ Smith was always injured. Nyland Green really struggled after returning from injury. The talent is still there. And this is the case with CJ Madden. This is the case with all of those guys. They're getting more chances. CJ Smith's at Memphis, Nyland Green's at Arizona State, who made the playoff last year. These guys are going to get chances because they're talented. The athletic ability is there. And you have to take chances on talented guys. The portal gives you opportunities to land guys like that who might not have played as much at their previous stops. That's what Purdue got in CJ Madden, who didn't get a chance at Georgia, really. And last season, played a little bit. Everything was just a mess on that defense. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do this year. Purdue's bringing him for a reason. He's one of their better players if he's being brought to media day. Interested to see what he can do because Purdue needs a breakout pass rusher. That's where you can make a difference. That you put pressure on an opposing passer when you're looking to force upsets like Purdue's going to have to do this year. Create some turnovers. Create some bad throws. Get them rushed. Get them rattled. If you can have a pass rush, that goes a long way. I know the last staff was really high on him before his injury. Whatever that's worth, he's going to be an interesting one. Is one of the guys who stayed. And then Tony Grimes has a really interesting story, man. I remember his name from back in COVID time when he enrolled early at North Carolina. He was a 5-star recruit, class of 21, enrolled early, was reclassified, so was a full year early. He did well at North Carolina. Couple of all-conference honorable mention nods. He started 28 games there in Chapel Hill. Mitch Trubisky University, North Carolina is. Transferred to Texas A&M, got hurt there, didn't play, and then went to UNLV, where he started every game last season, put together a solid year, and now he wants to close his career strong at the Big Ten level. This will be, since he didn't play at A&M, playing in the Big Ten will be a big opportunity for him. He proved himself nicely in the ACC. Now he has a good opportunity here to put something nice on film and look at putting together a draft-worthy resume. And I'll be interested to hear about his story. 4 teams is a lot, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a thing. It's part of the landscape we live in now. A little side note here. I would have loved to have Ryan Brown there to hear what he has to say, but I understand why he isn't going. If you're taking a quarterback to media days, he is your starter. Clear cut. Is that the case right now with Ryan Brown? I don't know. I don't think so. I think he is by far the front runner. I would be surprised if it's Malachi Singleton or Evans Chuba taking the first snap on August 31st when Purdue takes on Ball State. 31st, 30th? 30th, I think. My bad. I understand why Ryan Brown isn't there, but I'm fascinated to hear about the decision to go from UNC back to Purdue, the decision to transfer in the first place. Very weird there. There's nothing wrong, again, with what he did. The Bill Belichick aspect really throws more into it. But I don't think Purdue's ready to name a starter. I'd be surprised if Purdue names a starter until a couple weeks into camp. Maybe Purdue doesn't name a starter. I don't know. I haven't really done much research into what Barry Odom's done in the past, but he did have a quarterback situation last year with Sluka and with Haj Malik Williams out at UNC or UNLV. Goodness. So we'll see what he does there. But as you look at the Big Ten as a whole, the Cleveland.com media poll will come out. The Big Ten doesn't sponsor an official preseason poll, but Cleveland.com does one every year. Purdue's going to be picked 18th. I assume it comes out tomorrow or Tuesday. Recording this here Sunday night. Purdue's going to be picked 18th. I'd be surprised if anyone picked Purdue to finish anywhere besides 18th. And that's okay. That is okay. You would have to be really persuasive to justify not putting Purdue last in the league. I'm not saying Purdue can't finish better. In fact, I think Purdue will get a win in league play. I do. But it's pretty hard to argue for anyone else at this point to finish last. We're going to dive into some of Purdue's biggest questions entering fall camp next week. They're abundant. There are a lot of them. There's not much name recognition. You remember Purdue firing its coach last year, and you remember your last image of this Purdue team being a 66-0 loss at Indiana, a 1-11 season. It's hard to bounce back from that in the eyes of the public. So don't expect Purdue to get a lot of love here. That's okay. That's okay. Sometimes I think the whole rather be an underdog than a favorite thing is overblown, but if you're Purdue here, not a lot of is expected of you publicly. Go out there and see what you can do. It's all open for you. I think there will be a lot of coaches who take this opportunity to talk about the mess that is the clearinghouse for NIL deals that the House settlement set up. Look, the deals are getting rejected. People aren't happy about it. This was always how this was going to go. We've talked about this on the show here. All that matters is when the next lawsuit happens and what the timeline looks like on that. That or if college sports gets an antitrust exemption. Wouldn't bank on it, but that's a possibility too. You've already seen a lawsuit about the settlement for Title IX purposes. We'll see. The educational component of this is very up in the air. We'll see what a judge rules. This was going to be messy, though, and the only questions, what's next, and how much do schools try to blatantly disregard this? Right now, I think the answer to that is they will very much try to blatantly disregard this. I think, too, on the note of the preseason poll, one of the storylines as well around the Big Ten is how top-heavy the league is. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, if it's just a thing, but you're going to see the top four in some order will be Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, and Michigan. And that's how it was last year, I think. That's how it's probably going to be every year. Those four really recruited a different level. Southern Cal is doing the same currently in this upcoming class. It's just part of it. You know, that's where the Big Ten is right now. That's what makes the Big Ten a little bit different than the SEC, where there's a little bit more depth to the league, where there's a little bit more depth of teams that can compete for a conference title. But that's where the Big Ten is right now. It's a top-heavy league. That'll be a storyline. You have teams that are trying to get into that mix. Certainly Indiana trying to build off of last season. Ditto with Illinois, a really good year last year, and they get a lot back. Iowa is always in the mix. They think they've got a quarterback now. We'll see. What can Southern Cal do? I mean, can Lincoln Riley really start to put something together out there? Nebraska, year 2 of Raiola, year 3 of Matt Rule. There are a lot of interesting teams here who are trying to crack that top 4, but until we see it, this is a really top-heavy league. You're also going to hear some college football playoff talk, I think. Now, the Big Ten is very interesting in this regard. The Big Ten has been very quiet, but it's been adamant that it supports a different format than what the SEC and the Big 12 have publicly supported. Those two, all of these are for 16-team formats of college football playoff. The SEC and Big 12 want a 5+11 format, 5 auto bids for conference champions, 11 at-large spots. whereas the Big Ten supports, get ready for it, a 4-4-2-2-1 format. 4 bids for the Big Ten and SEC champions, 2 for the ACC and Big 12, 1 for the next highest rated conference champion, and then the rest are at-large bids. I think that would be 3. Can the Big Ten get that across? I don't know. You heard Brett McMurphy from On3 report that the Big Ten won't back down from what it wants unless the SEC moves to 9 conference games. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know. Chris Lowe over at ESPN is very dialed in with the SEC, and he said that he thinks the SEC might end up going to 9 conference games. I don't know. We'll see. The SEC's been very vocal about what they want. They made that happen at their spring meetings back in Memorial Day time. Granted, the SEC always has more media attention on it, too. I don't know that there are microphones in Tony Petitti's face asking him to talk about this all the time. Why does this matter, though? I do have some theories. You know, it's like we talked about with the SEC being deeper. I think the SEC wants access to more than 4 teams, more than 5 teams. Whereas I think the Big Ten is looking to just have those 4, probably get a 5th, maybe a 6th in there. Anytime we're looking at large spots in the future, these are going to be all Big Ten and SEC for the most part. They just are. Those 2 leagues are so far ahead of everyone else in the sport that you're not going to see a whole lot of at-large bids coming out of the ACC, coming out of the Big 12. It's just not likely to happen, especially with strength of schedule being a factor. The SEC's been really vocal about making strength of schedule a bigger part of the story here, and that metric will overwhelmingly skew in favor of the Big Ten and SEC. Something on this, too, and why I think this is bad for Purdue. I know I'm very much kind of a lone soldier here on not being a fan of college football playoff expansion. From a Purdue perspective, the value of bowl games is completely gone. And going to a 16-team playoff, we'll see what happens with bowl games, because a lot of these bowl contracts are up after this year or after next year, right around there. We're at a reality now where bowl games are the NIT. They're the CBI. They're the crown. They're not all that relevant on a national landscape. It was jarring this year, and not in a bad way, just new. As these bowl games were going on, the conversation is all about the next round of the playoff. And it's kind of like the NIT. The NIT is going on at the same time as the NCAA Tournament, but you don't hear anyone talk about the NIT when they're playing between the first and second weekend of the NCAA Tournament. No. That's what's happened here with bowl games. And for Purdue, I think that's a bummer, because getting to a bowl game is still a big deal for a lot of these programs in the Big Ten. It's going to take a really special season for these teams to reach the college football playoff. It's not all that likely. So anything that you can get that's deemed worthy, deemed valuable, is great. And that's not going to be the case with bowls moving forward, I don't think. Unintended consequences of what's going on here. And then one final thought on media days here before we get into NCAA tournament expansion. How much do these events really need to take place anymore? I love them. I'm a college football junkie. I will take all of the headlines. I will take all of the podium sessions. I'll listen to all of it. All the podcasts that come out, the interviews that Barry Odom does. Great, sign me up. But there was really nothing interesting that came out of Atlanta last week with the SEC. That's with every media member and every radio station in the Southeast there, trying to get quotes from these guys, trying to get headlines going. I just don't know that there's all that much to say in a world like we live in now, where the conversation is 24/7, 365. This isn't like it was back in the days of the Skywriters tour, when the reporters were flying from city to city to interview coaches. This isn't like it was in the 2000s, in the pre-crazy internet social media days, when this was when you really first heard from coaches. These conversations are nonstop. It's just a little different now. And in the era of revenue sharing, these athletic departments are going to be looking to save every dollar possible. I know even at Purdue, Mike Babinski talked about how some of the non-revenue sports are cutting back on travel for non-conference games to help the budget. He talked about how women's soccer took a couple of non-conference trips out to the West Coast a few years ago. And now, don't quote me on this, I think he said they're not leaving Indiana, Illinois, and Ohio. Maybe Kentucky. It was all close states that would be bus trips. Do these schools from the Eastern time zone need to fly out to Las Vegas and probably stay a night out there just for a 10-minute podium session and then some roundtable conversations? I don't know. It's interesting to me. This episode is brought to you by me. Yes, me. When I'm not watching sports, or more accurately, talking about them, I'm talking insurance with the people of Indiana. As an agent with Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance, I want to help you protect what you've worked hard to achieve. From home and auto to life and business insurance, I'm here to help you. Give me a call at 317-846-5861 or email me, jordan.jones@infarmbureau.com, and let's protect you from life's everyday risks. One of the big stories here on the college basketball side during a very quiet period of college basketball is whether the NCAA tournament will expand or not. It sounds like this is going to be tabled for the time being, but all indications are that it's inevitable. The two options being proposed are 72 and 76 teams. That's part of the question here. You probably already know my stance here, considering I was just against college football playoff expansion, which is largely popular. Not a big fan of NCAA tournament expansion basketball either. The NCAA tournament is the most unique event in sports because you have a championship tournament where over 75% of the field has virtually zero chance of winning at all. And that's the beauty of it. The Thursday and Friday of the NCAA tournament, two of the best days of the year on the sports calendar. But expanding the tournament means you're expanding Tuesday and Wednesday. And I don't know that anyone really wants that. From a Purdue perspective, this doesn't really matter. Let's face it, Purdue's been in the tournament all but 3 years since 2006. In the vast majority of those, it's been a 4 seed or better. It's not on the bubble. It shows no signs of being on the bubble conversation anytime soon. So this doesn't really matter for Purdue per se. But from the fan perspective, I don't like this at all. Yes, you would be expanding Tuesday and Wednesday more. But what does that look like? I can't imagine that it's great because I think it takes away from Thursday and Friday. It's going to benefit the power conferences only. Sure, say we go to 76 teams, you're going to get an extra mid-major or two out of those 8 into the tournament. You'll get a Missouri Valley team. You'll get you'll get an extra Sun Belt team or something in there every now and then, but it's just not going to be a big thing. I'll always want justice for 2016 Valparaiso, and hopefully a team or two like that gets in, but this is going to reward mediocrity in power conferences. Yay. Just what everyone wants. More teams like last year's North Carolina, like last year's Ohio State, that nobody deemed successful seasons, like last year's Indiana where they were running the coach out of town. You're going to see more and more teams with mediocre records and mediocre resumes get in. You look at the bubble now. The whole concept of a strong bubble doesn't exist. It just doesn't. I know everyone says every year the bubble is weak this year. That's because the bubble's never strong. It's almost an oxymoron. If you're that strong, you're not going to be on the bubble. I'm waiting for a coach to be fired. after the conference tournament, despite playing in the NCAA tournament. It's coming at some point, man. And, the other postseason tournaments should probably go away if this happens. The Crown, the NIT, the CBI, the CIT. Do we really need these? I don't know. I don't really understand why those still need to exist. But, the other thing I don't like is that it brings more variance into the mix. The only qualm I have about the NCAA tournament is just that it ruins seasons for good teams. You look back a few years ago, Purdue enters the NCAA tournament 29-5. It's a 1 seed. It wins the Big Ten. It wins the Big Ten tournament. And the only thing anyone remembers about that season is that Purdue lost to Fairleigh Dickinson. The importance of the NCAA tournament is already really high, and I don't think that's necessarily healthy for the sport. But you're adding more teams to the mix, and you're making it harder for the top teams to validate what they've already proven through 32 regular season games in a conference tournament. I like seeing the best teams advance. I want to see the best teams rewarded with the NCAA tournament success that they've really earned. Upsets are going to happen here and there, but I like seeing rewards for the best teams. So, I don't think this necessarily helps as you bring more teams and more variance into the mix. It's been tabled for now. We're going to get one more year at least with 68 teams. I'm very skeptical that it'll stay that way. I think it'll expand. I'm not sure where the money comes from. I really don't think that there is a tremendous amount of more money than what is already being given to bring more Tuesday and Wednesday games into the mix. I don't see that. Consider me skeptical. I think it's the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, ACC, Big East commissioners. They want more shares. They want more revenue. But that's it for today. Next week, we're previewing fall camp. It starts on Thursday, July 31st. We're almost there, folks. Best time of the year. College football season gets going, college basketball preseason, and that means the podcast is rolling for 9 months nonstop. Be sure to subscribe. I know there are a lot of folks that have mixed feelings entering this season. Never doubt the paramount importance of football to what Purdue needs to do from an athletic side. Football is what makes everything else viable. Purdue has to get back to competitiveness, and if Purdue starts to bounce back under Barry Odom, I have little doubt a lot of the enthusiasm will return. We'll be talking about it here, good, bad, ugly, whatever it may be. Subscribe, follow on Twitter @BoilersBeyond, and come listen Wednesday night when I'm on with Inside the Pylon. That'll be live on YouTube and in their podcast feeds thereafter. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week. Take care.